panibagong araw, panibagong aral naman ang ating matutunan. I'm Teacher Zanette, your computer system servicing teacher. Last quarter, we talked about the different parts of an analog multimeter. Let us review the different parts of an analog multimeter. So this is our analog multimeter. What do you think is the first part of an analog multimeter? Very good. That is the pointer. How about the next part? Correct. That is the scale. How about the next part? Correct. Very good. That is the dial or the infinity knob. What else? Very good. That is the 0 ohm adjuster. And the next is? Correct. That is the range. And our range selector. And what do you call the wires that are connected to our analog multimeter? Very good. That is our test probes. What do you think is the name of the black wire in our analog multimeter? Correct. That is the negative probe. How about the red one? Very good. That is the positive probe. Congratulations! You got the correct answers! Okay, now that you know already the different parts of an analog multimeter, we can now proceed to our next discussion. But before we proceed to our next discussion, let us have first an activity. Our activity is called Wordscape. So the instruction for this activity is to rearrange the letter of the word to a correct word or a statement. So I will give you you will try to correct the word. So rearrange the letter to form a correct word. Okay, are you ready? Okay, very good. Let's proceed to our activity. What do you think is the first word? Very good. It is the scale. How about the next word? Very good. It is the range. Next word. What do you think is the next word? It is the dial. Correct. Very good. And the second to the last word is voltage. Correct. Very good. Okay, next, let's identify what is the statement. What do you think is the correct statement? Alright, what is the statement? Very good. The statement is DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. Correct. Very good. You got the correct answers. So based on our activity, what do you think is our lesson for today? Very good. Our lesson for today is DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. So today, we're going to arrange the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter, follow the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter, and perform the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. But before we proceed to our lesson proper, let us have first a discussion for our classroom standard. So our classroom standard is #ligo, kain at tulog. So the first hashtag is #ligo. Maligo ka muna bago mag-aral. Kapag nakaligo, hindi ka magiging mabaho. So that is our first classroom standard. #ligo. So kailangan muna nating maligo upang ang pag-aaral natin ay matiwasay. Next hashtag is #kain. So, #kain. Bago magpatuloy sa videong ito, dapat ikaw ay nakakain upang ang utak ay pagganahin. Okay, that is our hashtag number 2. #kain. Kailangan nating kumain upang meron tayong enerhiya sa pagsagot ng mga aralin. Next hashtag and the last hashtag will be #tulog. siguraduhin nakatulog ka ng 6 hanggang 8 oras upang sa pagsagot ng ating aralin, ikaw ay may lakas. Kailangan nating matulog ng maayos. 6 hanggang 8 oras upang makapag-aral tayo ng maayos. Okay, that is our hashtag. That is our classroom standard. We have hashtag ligo, hashtag kain, at hashtag tulog. So that is our classroom standards. Hey, are you ready for our next activity? Okay, very good. Next activity will be Place Me Right. The instruction for this activity is you're going to place the right number that tells the flow of the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. So, kailangan nating maglagay ng numero sa nararapat na steps or sino ang naunang steps sa DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. So, are you ready? Okay, let's start. These are the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. What do you think is the first step in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter? Our first step is set the range to be used. In setting the range to be used, watch this video. This is how to set the range for DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. In setting the range, just simply turn the range selector to the specific range that you want to use. So this is our range selector. And this is the pointer of our range selector. Always remember, in setting the range in analog multimeter, the pointer must point to the range that you want to use. So this is the area for direct current voltage. So for example, we are going to test a voltage that has 18 volts, 18 V or 18 volts. So we are going to set the range higher than the voltage that we are going to test. Do not set the range lower than the voltage that you are going to test. Alright, we have already on the first step. Let us continue to the next step in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. What do you think is the second step? Okay, our second step is identify the scale to be used. In identifying the scale, watch the video. This is how to identify the scale in direct current voltage reading in analog multimeter. For example, we set the range in 0.1 range. The next step is you are going to identify the scale. This is the scale that we are going to use in DC voltage reading. So for example, we are going to set the range in 0.1. 0.1, we are going to read the scale in 0 to 10. 0.1 scale black, color black, 0 to 10. Okay, next, if we set 0.25 in our range, we are going to use the scale of 0 to 50. 0 going to 50. Next, if we are going to use the range of 2.5, we are going to use the scale of 0 to 250. 0 to 250. Next, set the range to 10. Range of 10. we are going to use the scale of, we will go back to 0 to 10. 0 to 10. And for the range of 50, we are going to use the 0 going to 50. 0 going to 50. And next, if we are going to set the range of 250, we are going to use the scale of 0 to 250. 0 to 250. And last range, if we set the range in 1000, we are going to use the scale of 0 to 10. 0 to 10. So that is our second step. What do you think is the third step in DC voltage reading? Our third step is read the scale reading. So after setting the range to be used, after identifying the scale to be used, you are going to read the scale according to the set of range and scale that you are using. Alright, in scale reading, watch this video.
For the scale reading, we are going to identify in what scale does our pointer in analog multimeter points. For example, we have here the color red line in the picture, which indicates the fluctuation of the pointer. So the pointer fluctuates in between 4 and 6, 20 and 30 and 100 and 150. So as you can see, we have there a table below. The table tells us the different ranges and the different scale and the scale count of each scales. Scale count means each line of the scale has a value. For example, in black, 0 to 10 or scale 0 to 10. Each scale is 0.2. For example, our pointer deflects in between 4 and 6. We will not read the scale 20 and 30 and 100 and 150 if we are going to use the scale of 0 to 10. So it means our pointer points on the fifth or number 5 scale. Let's count from 4. 4, 4.2, 4.4, 4.6, and 4.8, and 5. Between 4 and 6 is 5. That is why the scale count of our 0 to 10 scale is 0.2. Next, for the scale of 0 to 50, the scale count is 1. Each line of the scale is 1 in the scale of 0 to 50. We have there the pointer points in between 20 and 30. Let's count. Start with 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. The number between 20 and 30 is 25. So the scale count of 0 to 50 scale is 1. Next, the scale of 0 to 250. The scale count of 0 to 250 is 5. For example, there we have the pointer deflects between 100 and 150. So what will be the reading? It will be 125. Why? Because the scale count of 0 to 250 is 5. Let's start counting from 100, 105, 110, 115, 120, and 125. The number between 100 and 150 is 125. So that is what we call scale count.
Alright, our second to the last step is very good. Multiply the scale reading according to the scale being used. So your scale reading, you are going to multiply the scale reading according to the scale being used, and you will going to use the voltmeter chart. So this is the voltmeter chart. So in different ranges and different scales, you are going to multiply, you are going to multiply on a different multiplier. Okay, let's proceed to the last step in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. What do you think is the last step? Alright, so the last step is get the final and actual voltage reading. So, after setting, identifying the scale, reading the scale, and multiplying, you are now in the final output or the actual voltage reading. So, that is the step in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. So what are those steps? First, set the range to be used. Second, identify the scale to be used. Third, read the scale reading. Fourth, multiply the scale reading according to the scale being used with the use of voltmeter chart. And the last, get the final and actual voltage reading. So those are the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. Now that you know the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter, let us proceed to our next discussion. Our next discussion is all about voltmeter chart. DC voltmeter chart. So as you can see in our voltmeter chart, there are black area and the gray area in our voltmeter chart. The black area is the information that cannot be changed. So it means those information are standard and we are going to use it all throughout the process, all throughout the steps on voltage reading in analog multimeter. So in discussing voltmeter chart, we are going to apply the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. Again, what are the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter? We have, first, set the range to be used. Second, identify the scale to be used. Third, read the scale reading. And next, multiply the scale reading according to the scale being used. And the final is to get the final and actual voltage reading. Right, let's proceed. So in our voltmeter chart, as you can see there, we have the range, the scale reading example, the multiplier, and the actual reading. So the gray part is the scale reading example because it can be changed according to the scale that we read. And the actual reading is gray part also because it depends the actual reading on the scale being read. Okay, so below the chart, we have there the scale of our multimeter. So we have the red part, which is ACV, and we have there the black part, which is DCVA. So when we say DCV, it is the direct current voltage. So we are going to use that on the electronic devices that use batteries and power supply that converts AC voltage to DC. Okay, the red one is ACV, which means alternating current voltage. So those are the high voltages. That is why it is red. So we are going to use the black one because that is for the direct current voltage or for the low voltages. And ACV or the red one is being used for the high voltages. So we have 7 ranges in our multimeter tester or multimeter. We have 3 scale. So, number 1 scale is 0 to 10. And number 2 scale or the next scale is 0 to 50. And next scale is 0 to 250. Okay. Next, we have also a multiplier. Multiplier, we have 0.01, the 1, and the 100. So, for the range 0.1, we are going to use the scale block 0 to 10. I erased the 0 to 50 and 0 to 250 because sometimes you are confused in reading the scale. In 0.1 range, for example, we have there 4.4 scale reading. Why is it that we have 4.4 scale reading example? Because each scales in our scale 0 to 10 is 0.2. For example, we have here 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, 1. 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8, 2. Each scales in 0 to 10 is 0.2. So that is why we got the scale reading 4.4 because our pointer in our multimeter fluctuates on 4.4. So 4, 4.2, and 4.4. So that is our scale reading. So if we apply the steps in DC analog multimeter or DC voltage analog multimeter, we are going to first is to identify the range being used. So we identify the range and we identify the scale. Next is you scale read. Fourth, you multiply what you have read on the scale. So multiply it by 0.01. So 0.01 or 4.4 times 0.01 is equals to 0.044. If you don't want to use the multiplication, just turn
decimal point to the left.
So you are going to turn 2 decimal points. So 1 and 2. That is why we have here 4.4, 1, and 2. That is why we have the final output of or final actual reading of 0.044. Okay, let's have another example. If our multimeter pointer points on this scale, what do you think is the actual reading? So first, identify the range. So our range being used is 0.1. And what do you think is the scale that we are going to use? Okay, we are going to use the 0 to 10. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. What do you think is our scale reading? Our scale reading will be very good. That is 6. And what is our multiplier? Because we use the range of 0.1. Very good. Our multiplier is 0.01. So what will be the total actual reading? Correct. 0.06. Very good. That is our range in DCV 0.1. Next, let's proceed to the next range, 0.5. So first step is to identify the range. Next is what is the scale to be used in the range of 0.5. What is the scale? Okay, very good. 0 to 50. For example, we have here a scale reading of 22. Why is that our scale reading example is 22? Correct. Because each scale in our scale 0 to 50 counts 1. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So each scales in our scale 0 to 50 is count as 1. That is why we come up in the scale reading example of 22, 20, 21, 22. Very good. Next, we are going to multiply this scale reading. What is the multiplier for our scale? What is the multiplier for the range of 0.5? Still, it is 0.01. Very good. So, what is our final actual reading? 22 times 0.01 is equals to 0.22. Very good. If you don't want to use the multiplication, you are going to turn the decimal point to the left. 2 decimals to the left. Alright? So that is our range 0.5. Okay, let's have an example. If our pointer fluctuates in this area of the scale, what is the scale reading? What is the scale you are going to use? Is it 0 to 10, 0 to 250, or 0 to 50? Okay, so we are going to use the scale of 0 to 50. Not 250, but 0 and we're going to 5, 0, or 50. What do you think is the scale reading? Very good. Our scale reading is 30. And what is our multiplier? Correct. It is 0.01. So what do you think is the final actual reading? Alright, it is 0.30. Very good. 0.30. And if you don't want to use the multiplication, you're going to turn or move the decimal point to the left. 2 decimals. Alright. Let's proceed to the next range. Our range is 2.5. So what do you think is the scale we are going to use? If the range is 2.5, we are going to use the range of 0 to 250. 250. Okay. So for example, we have there a scale reading of 100. Why is that we have a scale reading of 110? Because our scale 0 to 250, each scale is count as 5. Okay. So 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. So each scale has 5 counts. Our scale reading is 110 because our pointer fluctuates on the 110 scale. So we have here 100, 105, and 110. So what do you think is our multiplier for the range of 2.5? Very good. Our multiplier is still 0.01. Alright. So what is our final actual reading or total actual reading? It is 110 times 0.01 is equals to 1.10. If you don't want to use still or again the multiplication, just move the decimal point to the left 2 decimal point. Okay, let's have another example. If our pointer fluctuates on this side of the scale in the range of 2.5, what is your scale reading? Okay, very good. Our scale reading is 150 because we use the scale of 0 to 250. 150 times 0.01, the multiplier, what will be the total? Very good. It is 1.50. Let's proceed to the next range. The next range is range DCV 10 or range 10. So what will be the scale being used? So the scale we are going to use is the block 0 to 10. 0 to 10. The scale reading example is 4.4. Just remember, if you are going to use 0 to 10, each scale counts 0.2. If the scale reading is 4.4, what is our multiplier if we are going to use the range 10? So we have multiplier 1. So 4.4 times 1 is equals 4.4. Okay, so let's have an example here. So we are going to use the range of DCV10. What scale you are going to use? Okay, because that is the range 10, the scale is 0 to 10. Alright. So, what will be the scale reading? Very good. Our scale reading is 6. And our multiplier, if the range is 10, is 1. What will be the total actual reading? Very good. It is same 6. Because any number that multiplies by 1, the product is the same. Let's proceed to the next range. The next range is 50. This is the second to the last range. Range 50. What is the scale you are going to use? We are going to use the 0 to 50. Okay, range 50, scale 0 to 50. So we are going to read the pointer. What is the scale reading? Okay, the scale reading is 22. Why is that it is 22? Because it is 20, 21, 22. Each scale is or count as 1. So 20, 21, 22. Our pointer points on the 22 scale. So our multiplier is the same in the range of 10. Our multiplier is 1. 22 times 1 is 22. Okay, another example for the range of 50. So we have here range of 50. What do you think is the scale you are going to use? Okay, so we are going to use the scale 0 to 50. What do you think is the scale reading? The pointer fluctuates on the 30. So we have the scale reading of 30 and the multiplier for the range of 50 is 1. So the total actual reading is 30. Very good. That is the range for 50. Let's have here the range of 250. In the range of 250, we are going to use the scale of 0 to 250. We have here a scale reading example. So our scale reading example is 110. Why is that our scale reading example is 110? Very good, because the fluctuation of the pointer points on the 110 scale. Each scale in 0 to 250 counts as 5. So we have here 100, 105, 110. Alright, what do you think is the multiplier for the 250 range? Same as In the range of 10 and range of 50, the range of 250 has a multiplier of 1. Okay, so the actual reading will be 110 times 1 is equals to 110. Very good. So that is our range 250. So let's have another example for the range of 250. What is the scale you are going to use? Very good. You are going to use the 0 to 250. So what will be the scale reading? Okay, so our scale reading is very good. It is 150. What will be the multiplier for 250 range? Alright, very good. It is multiplied by 1. What is our total actual reading? Very good. It is 150. Okay, let's proceed to the final range in our analog multimeter. So the range is 1000, and what do you think is the scale used? Okay, let's go back to the scale of 0 to 10. 0 to 10 for the range of 1000. We have here a scale reading example which is 4.4. Again, what is the count of each scale in 0 to 10? Very good. It is 0.2. That is why we have that scale reading example of 4.4. Because 4, 4.2, and 4.4. But the difference on the other ranges, the multiplier for the DCV 1000 or the range of 1000 is 100. So our actual reading or final actual reading is 4.4 times 100 is equals to 440. In 0.01, we have two zeros. That is why we move the decimal point to the left. And in 100, we have two zeros. Again, we move the decimal point to the right. Is that clear? 0.01, move the decimal point to the left, 2 decimals. 100, 2 zeros, move the decimal point to the right, 2 decimals. Okay, let's continue. We have another example for the range of 1000. If the pointer fluctuates on this area in the range of 1000, what will be our scale that we are going to use? Okay, we are going to use the 0 to 10. Very good. 0 to 10. And what will be the scale reading in the range of 1000 on this example? Very good. The scale reading is 6. So the scale reading is 6 times 100 is 600. Very good. 600. If you don't want to use the multiplication, you are going to move the decimal point to the right. So where is the decimal point of the number 6? So we have here on the right side of number 6 the decimal point. So we move 2 decimals to the right. So we have 600. So that is the total actual reading for the range of 1000. Very good. Thank you for participating on our activity. Now that you know the different dial settings in DC voltage reading and analog multimeter, let's have a short recap on our voltmeter chart. Okay, so for example here we have
Range 0.1.
the scale is 0 to 10. We have scale reading of 5. The multiplier is 0.01. What do you think is the actual reading? For here, for the range of 0.1. Our final reading is 0.05. 5 times 0.01 is 0.05. Next, we have DCV, or the range of 0.5. The scale is 0 to 50. The scale reading is 25. What will be the actual reading if you multiply the scale reading of 25 by 0.01? Very good. It is 0.25. Okay. Next is range of 2.5. So the scale is 0 to 250. What will be the final actual reading? 125 times 0.01 is very good. It is 1.25. Next range is 10. In the range of 10, you are going to use the black 0 to 10 scale. The given, the actual reading, and the multiplier is 1. What do you think is the scale reading example? Very good. It is 5. Next is the scale reading example is 25 and the actual reading is 25. So we use the range 50. What is the multiplier for 50? Very good. It is 1. 25 times 1 is equals to 25. Next is range of 250. The scale used is black 0 to 250. What do you think is the final actual reading if the example of the scale reading is 125 multiplied by 1 is very good. It is 125. Correct. The final range is 1000. The scale being used is 0 to 10 and the scale reading example is 5. What will be the multiplier if the total actual reading is 500? We're going to divide the 500 by 5. Very good. It is 100. Okay, so that is our voltmeter chart. Very good. You got all the correct answers. Alright. So if you have some questions or clarification about DC voltage reading and analog multimeter, you can message me or contact me on my cell phone number or Facebook Messenger. Okay, I have questions. Can you solve an actual reading if you don't know how to multiply numbers? Of course not. If you don't know how to multiply numbers, you cannot solve the actual reading of the voltage that you are going to test. Let's have a short recap about your mathematical basic operation, specifically in multiplication. Can you name the parts of the multiplication? As you can see in our monitor, we have here the different colors of the multiplication. We have the color blue, the green, the red, and the letter X. What is the first part of the multiplication? It is very good. It is the multiplicand. Multiplicand. And what do you think is the second part of the multiplication? What is the green color number in the multiplication? Alright, it is very good. It is the multiplier. Okay, next, what do you call the total of the multiplication? Part of the multiplication which has the color red numbers. What do you call the final total value in multiplication? Very good. It is the product. Correct. You got the correct answer. Okay. Next, what do you call this? Very good. That is the multiplication symbol. So those are the parts of the multiplication. We have the multiplicand, the multiplier, the product, and your multiplication symbol. Congratulations! You got the correct answers. Alright, if you have some questions or clarifications about this discussion, you can message me on my Facebook account or you can message me on my cell phone number. Okay, let's apply our lesson for today. So this is Joshua. Joshua encountered some trouble in his computer system. He discovered that the power supply unit of his PC is having a trouble. He wanted to check the power supply. Next, Joshua will start to check the power supply. The power supply has a maximum voltage rating of 18 volts. What range will Joshua going to use? And in what scale Joshua read the voltage rating? Okay, very good. Joshua will use the range of 50 and the scale of 0 to 50. Very good. Correct. That is the answer. Next, Joshua got a scale reading of 18 volts. Joshua take his analog multimeter and set the range in 50 and identify the scale, which is 0 to 50, got a scale reading of 18 volts. What do you think is the actual reading if Joshua used the range of 50 and scale of 0 to 50? So his scale reading is 18 and the multiplier for the range of 50 is 1. The total actual reading is 18. So that is the final actual reading of Joshua in testing his power supply of his PC. That is how we apply the voltage reading in analog multimeter. So next, what is the importance of voltage reading? And why do you think we need to discuss the voltage reading? Because voltmeter in analog multimeter will help us in troubleshooting and repairing computer systems and other electronic devices, such as your battery and the power supply of your computer system. Next, how will the voltmeter help us in identifying safety in our workplace? So, analog voltmeters provide a way to safe and accurate measure of voltage. So, it is the only instruments that can have a safe and accurate measure of voltage. So, that is how important the voltmeter or the analog multimeter is. Now that you know all the steps in DC voltage reading and analog multimeter and you know already the voltmeter chart, are you ready for the quiz? Okay, for our quiz, we have the multiple choice. So choose the letter of the correct answer. Write your answer on the sheet of paper or in your activity notebook. So I will read each questions and its choices. So let's start. Get ready. Get your pen and paper and answer the question. Just write the correct answer only or the correct letter only. So the following are the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter except A. Total the scale. B. Arrange the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. C. Identify the scale to be used. Okay, again, the following are the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. Except A. Total the scale. B. Arrange the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. And C. Identify the scale to be used. Number 2. After reading the scale, what is the next steps you're going to do? A. Identify the scale to be used. B. Multiply the scale reading according to the scale being used. And letter C. Get the final and actual voltage reading. Again, after reading the scale, what is the next step you're going to do? A. Identify the scale to be used. B. Multiply the scale reading according to the scale being used. And letter C. Get the final and actual voltage reading. Okay, next question. What scale will you use if you set the dial setting in the range of 1,000? A. 0 to 10. B. 0 to 50. C. 0 to 250. Again, what scale will you use if you set the dial setting in the range of 1,000? A. 0 to 10. B. 0 to 50. C. 0 to 250. Alright, number 4. The voltmeter has a scale reading of 15 and a range of 50. What will be the total voltage rating? Letter A, 10. Letter B, 15. Letter C, 20. Okay, again, number 4. The voltmeter has a scale reading of 15 and a range of 50. What will be the total voltage rating? Letter A, 10. Letter B, 15. Letter C, 20. Last number 5. Which of the following behavior is not applicable in performing DC voltage reading using analog multimeter? A. Safety first. B. Follow the steps. Letter C. Do it on your own way. Again, 5. Which of the following behavior is not applicable in performing DC voltage reading using analog multimeter? Letter A. Safety first. B. Follow the steps. C. Do it on your own way. Okay, that's all for today. But before we end this discussion, we have an additional activities. For the additional activity, you need to prepare an analog multimeter and a battery. To know if the battery in your home is working and safe to use, we need to test them for our own safety. To test the battery, let's apply the steps in DC voltage reading in analog multimeter. First, identify the value of the battery. So this battery has a 1.2 volts. It is a rechargeable battery. After identifying the battery, you are going to set the range of your multimeter. In setting the range of your multimeter, it must higher than the voltage of the battery that you are going to test. So if we have a battery of 1.2 volts, you are going to set your range higher than the voltage of the battery, which is 2.5. Okay? Next, after setting the range, you are going to put the red test probe or the positive probe to the bump of the battery. Here is the bump of the battery. Okay? Here is the bump of the battery, and the black probe or the negative probe, you are going to put it at the flat area of the battery. See? The pointer fluctuates if you put the test probes to the terminals of the battery. Then, read the scale. In reading the scale, if we use the range of 2.5, so we are going to read the scale of 0 to 250. And the scale reading will be multiplied by 0.01. We now read the scale. The scale is 120 multiplied by 0.01, which is 1.2 or 1.20 volts, which means our battery is full charge and ready to use. And that is how you test your battery at home. Alright, that is all for today. Thank you for participating in our discussion. May you keep safe. And again, this is Teacher Zanette, your computer system servicing teacher.